Hello, welcome to Carfin Catchup and a very, very wet Carfin Grotto today, so excuse the wet barnet. We're joined today by the rector of Carfin Grotto and the parish priest of St Francis Xavier, Father Jim Grant. So how has the last few weeks been, Father?
Well, we opened our churches a week past on Monday for 3 hours each day from 12 till 3, and I've exposed the Blessed Sacrament on the altar. The numbers coming have been, well, I think very good. I mean, yesterday we had 82, and that's roughly the numbers, the kind of numbers we were getting most days last week. Started off with 70 something, and then it moved up to even the 90s, the high 90s. So I'm very pleased with the numbers that are coming. But again, I know that this is only a short-term thing, that we hope very soon that our churches will be open for Mass. So that's what the people want, the Mass. They want the Eucharist. They want the bread of life. They're happy to come and pray before our Lord in the Eucharist, but they want to be fed with the bread of life. So I'm very hopeful that our First Minister might listen to some of the protestations that have been made about the length of time that she's going to wait before she opens up our churches for public worship. So hopefully within the next week or two, that's my hope, that our churches will open for Mass.
How will that look in terms of, will it be in the parish church, will it be in the glass chapel, will it be outside? What's your plans for Mass?
No, the glass chapel's far too small to accommodate those kind of numbers. We've marked out our church, as you know, and we guess, well, we're not guessing, we've estimated that the number who can be accommodated with 2 metre distancing is 84. At present, it's marked out for 84 people, but I'm hopeful that we have the facility here in the grotto to offer Mass outdoors, and I think there's certain advantages from that. First of all, outdoors there's much less chance of contagion. Even we keep our social distance, whether it be down to 2 metres or down to 1 metre rather or not. I would be hopeful that the weather might be good to us in the sense that we could have Mass somewhere in the grotto, and so that would be complement Masses in the church. That's my hope, because when you have Mass outside, I believe there's no need to wear a mask, and some people, I think, I know are still a little bit afraid to go into the building, and that might be their preference. If they could worship and attend Mass outdoors, then I think that would be good to offer them that alternative. So that's my hope.
You came here very, very shortly before lockdown, and the whole parish life's been disrupted for you. You know, that going back to the Mass would be a first step towards full normality in some sense. Yeah. Another aspect of normality of a parish life and a life of a priest is visiting the sick. You know, in recent days we've heard some people asking about you possibly visiting the sick in their households. What's the situation with that just now? What's the scenario?
Well, I'm not really sure where I am with all of that. I would love to go and visit the sick, but I'm more than aware of all the restrictions placed on people who are maybe shielding or housebound, and I'm very sensitive that their families would have said, well, if anybody's going to come and visit my mum or my dad, I'd like to know about it first. And so I want to put a shout out, because I really don't have a list of the sick. I did ask for that when I came here, but then I've only got one name handed in, and then lockdown came. So I perhaps use this means to say, I am very happy to go out and to visit the sick in St Francis Xavier Parish who are housebound, who are genuinely housebound and who can't get out. But I wouldn't want to do that unannounced or without the express knowledge of their families. So if you have a mum or a dad or an aunt or a neighbour that you know is not getting out, would love to see the priest, would maybe, I'm not really sure if I can take them communion yet because of all these restrictions, but it'd be a first step anyway to go and visit them and introduce myself to them. But I would only do that if people were kind enough to hand me in a name, an address, maybe a phone number, and give me the go-ahead to go and visit whoever it may be, mum, dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, neighbour, whatever.
But one of the things as well that people are asking about is the availability of confession. That's something which during the lockdown has been totally messed for people. What was the situation in the grotto?
Well, I went into the confessional during the 3 hours that we have up in the church for private prayer, and some people came to the confessional. I don't know if that was breaking the rules or not. I'm really not. I've lost the whole. I've lost where we are with all of that. But I did hear confessions down in front of the glass chapel and during the good weather. It's got sunburnt actually hearing confessions down here. And so I would be keen, if I thought this is a lovely day, it's a nice day, the grotto's fairly busy, I would be happy to come down and sit in one of the benches in front of the glass chapel and hear someone's confession. They can sit 6 meters away, 6 feet away. What's 6 feet? Is that, what's 6 feet? Is that 2 meters? 6 feet away. And so I would hear their confession. I've also asked some other priests if they would like to help me out with that, and they've very readily agreed that, yeah, give me a shout if you want. And so they would just make themselves available in front of the glass chapel. But I don't want to put a day or a time on it for the reasons that, such as this morning, I could have said, yeah, I'll hear confessions from 11 till 12. It's pouring out the heavens. There's no one in the grotto really just now. So I just want to do that at the moment spontaneously. Sometimes I've often felt that for people who have been away from the sacrament of confession for a long time, going into a box in a church sometimes puts them off. And I think a more informal kind of a setting, such as the open air outside, I think might appeal to some people and take away some of their fears or their apprehensions that they might feel about going into a confessional box. Even if it weren't for the lockdown, even if it weren't for all the restrictions, I would still hope to offer that service in the grotto. I've even thought of putting up a couple of kind of outdoor confessionals, very basic confessionals for people to come and confess their sins. But this lockdown has really stymied so much that I haven't progressed that. But I do hope to hear confessions, yeah.
That'd be a comfort to people. I think people really appreciate that and welcome that news. One of the things, obviously, that's also been stymied by the whole lockdown scenario is this build-up towards the Centenary of the grotto. Now, we had hoped to do something to mark the cutting of the first sod in a few months' time, but we're looking at the long-term picture of the next 2 years. What's your sort of plans and your hopes and your dreams for the grotto over the next 2 years?
Well, as you said, the anniversary of the cutting of the first sod in 1920, the centenary of that occurs in this September. I don't know where we'll be with all social distancing and all of that stuff in September. The schools will be back, and I would be hoping to involve the school. Originally my plan was maybe to reenact that cutting of the first sod with the children and maybe their teachers dressed up in period costume, as it would have been in the 1920s. I don't know if that's going to be possible now, but I would like to mark it in some way, but we'll have to wait and see where we'll be in September. But I would hope that would then kick off a whole planning for the centenary of the grotto in 2022. Obviously, I would want, there's some fairly basic and essential work needs done in the grotto. It's some of the stonework and things like that are falling away, and so there's a lot of that work would need to be done to make sure the grotto is in pristine condition. But I was also I was approached by someone a few weeks ago, and I thought about it, and that's quite a good idea, about putting in a statue of Saint Gianna Molla. So she would be one of the people I'll speak about her in a wee minute, but I also thought of statues to, the Sacred Heart. Although Christ the King is pointing to his heart, I think maybe a more recognisable statue of the Sacred Heart might be a good thing to put in. Padre Pio, although I got the statue of Padre Pio for the church, he's been well visited here and prayed before here in the grotto. But I might want to put in a more permanent, maybe marble or granite statue of the Sacred Heart of Padre Pio, Saint Padre Pio in the grotto. We'll go back to Gianna Molla, and she, for those who don't know who she was born in 1922. I think she was an Italian lady. She qualified as a doctor and medicine and surgery. And she then concentrated on pediatrics for children and mothers. And she married. She was very much involved in her faith in St. Vincent de Paul, and she worked for Catholic Action. And she met her husband, and then they married, and they had 3 children. I think two girls and a boy. And then she fell pregnant again with her 4th child. And 2 months into her pregnancy, she experienced tremendous pain. She went to see her doctor, and she was diagnosed with a fibroma on her uterus. And the doctors, or the pediatrics, the surgeons gave her 3 choices. First option was to remove the tumour of her womb, but that would involve killing the child that she was carrying. But she would go on to have other children. The second option was to perform a hysterectomy, which would kill the child in her womb, and that would mean no more children for her. And the third option would be to remove the tumour from her uterus, with the potential of further complications that may well harm the baby. So she was determined that she would not lose the child, and she was quite adamant about the fact that there was no way she was going to kill her child just so that she could live or go on to have other children. So I think she decided for the third option, that they would try and remove the tumour and save the child. But she knew then that was full of complications and the potential that things might not work out. But it was the best of the 3 options without damaging her child. So she went on to have the child, I think by caesarean section, and she had the child on the 21st of April, and then she became very unwell, and 7 days later, a week later, exactly 1 week later, she died of sepsis. But she was determined, and she told her husband, and she made them all promise that they would not interfere, and that the child at all costs had to be saved. So that's the story of Gianna Molla, and she's the patron saint of mothers, of physicians, and of the unborn child. And the daughter that was saved, the 4th child that was saved, I think is now quite actively involved in pro-life work. And she's known to some of our SPUC members here in Scotland or Britain. And so I was on the phone to SPUC. They'd be very interested in this project because, as I said, most of the statues around the grotto here are predominantly of religious people, priests, bishops, monks, whatever. I don't know there are many bishops. I don't know if there's many bishops.
Well, Columba maybe.
Yeah.
Columba.
Well, Columba. Right.
An abbot bishop.
Oh, well, Patrick was a bishop. No harm to the bishop.
Pius X as well.
Pius X. Oh well, I stand corrected. But they're all religious people, and I thought it would be nice to have a statue erected to a laywoman who took her faith very seriously and has a very important pro-life message to give to today's world. She was beatified by Saint John Paul II, and then about 10 years later she was canonized by him, and her husband Pietro, or Peter, and her 2 daughters and her son all attended the canonisation. And as far as I believe, that's the first time in history that a husband has attended the canonisation of his wife. And I think she was the first working mother ever to be canonised as well. So she ticks quite a few boxes there for me. Motherhood is a wonderful vocation, and the pro-life cause is very important to me, and I think it's a very important message. So I would hope that might be a possibility. It's I don't know if it's a coincidence or what, but the day, her feast day is the 28th of April, and the 27th of April is the anniversary of the passing of the 1967 Abortion Act. So I would maybe be hopeful that if all went well, that would be the occasion, either the 27th or the 28th, to erect a statue to Gianna Molla and have a little maybe message in memory of all the children, the millions of children who have lost their lives since the passing of that Act in 1967. So it would stand as also a memorial to the children who have not been allowed to see the light of day.
I think that'd be very welcome. I think, and also in light of the sad news yesterday that since the Irish have implemented this last year, there's been 6,666 Irish children lost.
It's absolutely awful.
So I think it is timely. I think when society is looking at divergent paths, looking at very extreme abortion laws coming in, her example will be more than welcome, and for not just because I think a lot of Catholics are not on side of that as well. That's one of the biggest issues for Spuck. So I think it's more than welcome. Just to kind of wrap up, one of the things that people ask us a lot, and I don't know the answer to it really, you know better than me, is that the future of the Pilgrimage Centre. We hear this all the time, and I understand why they feel that way, because it's very sorely missed. What's your plans for that building?
It was the most common question I was asked when I came here. Even before I came here, would I be opening up the Pilgrimage Centre? I have always felt that the Pilgrimage Centre was part and parcel of the whole grotto experience. It's the grotto's, it's an extension of the grotto's hospitality to pilgrims, to offer a place where you can get a bite to eat, restrooms, and obviously a place where you can purchase a souvenir. So I was perhaps the Pilgrimage Centre's greatest advocate long before I came here and long before it was closed, and I was very opposed to it being closed. I understand the reasons why they did so. So when I came here, it was my very, very firm intention to reopen the Pilgrimage Centre in some way. I had made some small steps towards that, and then lockdown came. So that has kind of put the kitewash on that, in a sense, for a wee while. I suppose to be, in order to be practical, it's possibly not possible really to reopen it this year, because we don't know where we'll be with all these restrictions and so on and so forth. And it might have been providential that I wasn't able to open it as quickly as I hoped, because whoever was taking it over wouldn't have been able to. It would have been closed. So there are some essential works have to be done in it as well. The work has to be done to the floor, and a new boiler has to be put in, and obviously it's in need of decoration. It's a bit tired. So there is a number of things that have to be attended to and dealt with before we could open. And because of all the restrictions and lockdown and so on, I don't see us really making much headway with that before the end of this year. But I'm very hopeful and pray that this time next year it will be open in time for the season, the grotto season opening at Easter next year.
That's good.
So that's my thoughts.
That's wonderful. So thanks very much for your time, Father, today, this very wet day at Carfin. As I was saying earlier to Father Grant, the First Minister might this week lift the restrictions on the 5-mile travel. I know a lot of people have been messaging us online expressing a wish to come to Carfin Grotto, but they can't because they can't go out with 5 miles. So hopefully she will lift that, and we'll be more than delighted to see you here. But keep on tuning in to our live masses every day, and keep in touch with Carfin Grotto. God bless.